Hey, Graham, how you doing? Thanks for coming on today.
Oh, that's just brilliant. Thank you, Danny, for inviting me. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
So I've known you for quite a while now. We bump into each other in the craziest places. But when I first met you, I didn't know your last name, so I saved you in my phone as Conscious Graham. Oh. And the reason I did it is because we were having such really deep, amazing conversations. Absolutely. And I was amazed at your insight. And obviously that was years and years, like years ago.
Yeah, so, when we first met, I think I was very much on the beginning part of a journey where, you know, I'd been asleep for many, many years, perhaps about 30 years, and suddenly I'd broken through, and suddenly all this stuff was coming in. And that's exactly what I found with you. You know, it was free flow, instant conversation, right into authenticity and all of that. So yeah, to completely reflect back what you said there for you, you know, that's how it was for me, definitely.
Yeah, and I know it's been a real hard road. You've really had some demons, or yeah, you've definitely been doing some amazing work with yourself, and you've had a lot to cope with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just because you kind of get on the path doesn't mean to say that the curveballs stop. You know, but fortunately today, I feel like I've got more tools in the toolbox to be able to deal with things. I sometimes pick the wrong tool for the wrong thing, but metaphorically speaking, but I certainly, you know, back beyond 8 years ago, I certainly didn't have any tools in the toolbox, really. Well, I did, but they weren't particularly positive tools. And, you know, I'm glad to say that's not how it is today. And yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
So we've often spoken as well about, we've found a lot of common ground over childhood and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think it's kind of quite important to recognize why we are struggling so much. And, you know, did that come from your upbringing, from school?
I think part of it definitely was from upbringing. But I guess you could call it spiritual or philosophical kind of beliefs lead me to kind of also believe that it was accumulated karmic activity from previous lives that came up into this life and needed to be dealt with. The buck stopped here kind of thing. And ancestrally as well, you know, just on a biological level, I think all of us carry a coding of stored memories, and it's like a kind of earthbound akashic record, if you like, of all the things that have gone on in the past with parents, grandparents, great-great-grandparents, etc. And we are kind of chosen to be the pioneers at kind of ironing that stuff out, if you like, you know. And the people who we come into contact with, and I know you like me, seem to attract these kind of people that have this very deep insight. And every time there is that interaction, something gets shared, something gets exchanged that you can take away with and integrate into your life in some sort of way. And so it kind of spreads out almost on a weekly basis of different influences and different people's insights that really do pave a very steady brickwork on the path ahead. And
forming this community, like we talk, but just from the conversations that we had, that's one of the reasons I created this channel, was because we'd have so much insight. And I love what you were just saying then about the ancestral patterns and the transference through generations. And I really believe that we were put here as well at this time, that we came here to take ownership and end these ancestral patterns. So it takes a lot of courage and power to be able to stand in your vulnerability and to be able to own your own emotions without externalizing them and continuing the cycle of transference. And yeah, I mean, what do you do that kind of helps you with that?
It's the basics. I follow a pathway with yoga, with meditation, which I practice every day. I have a good, strong family or sangha of people around me, both online and offline, who are also practitioners of yoga and meditation. And I enjoy reading. I never ever enjoyed reading when I was at school, because it was almost, you had to read a certain chapter by a certain time. It was done like in a very military, organized, disciplinarian kind of way. And so I never really absorbed the words properly, because it was something I had to do rather than something I wanted to do. Now I read because I enjoy reading. So I try and read at least an hour before I go to bed, and I absorb information from various writers, not just writers that are around today, but writers and people that have written books, some of them thousands of years old. And I gain a lot of insight from that. And I also I just try and be in the present as much as possible. I mean, it's very difficult when you get caught in the mind not to be, and we live in a mental construct, don't we? This world that we're in at the moment can distract us at any point, at anywhere, and it catches us out. You know, it catches me out nearly on a daily basis. I feel suddenly, oh, I know what I do. I'll put Radio 4 on or something. Suddenly this tsunami of bad news media that is all intonated to make you feel fearful, and you know, like something bad, terrible is going to happen. That raise in that cortisol level, the breathing gets shallower, and I'll get to about an hour into it and wonder why, you know, I start to actually physically hurt. You know, these feelings, these emotions. Nowadays, there's no barrier between what goes on up in here and what goes on in here. And so I have to be very, very careful, very mindful. But I always find that if I discipline myself to get up early in the morning, before, you know, I even have a cup of tea, just to get a cushion out on the floor with a candle and just be in silence for at least half an hour and just watch the breath, not, you know, get up to any kind of major esoteric spiritual assault courses or anything like that. Just very, very simple stuff.
So is that like kind of just being curious of what's going on internally and just observing that?
Absolutely. And I'm not a saint, you know, I'll keep that going for like maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and then I'll go somewhere, I'll visit somewhere, the practice drops out, and I can get unconscious again. But I always know that that's part of it as well. And I never really enjoy being one of these people sometimes that sort of sits there and goes, oh, I really had it the other week, and oh, what, look at me now, and here I am eating crisps again. If I want a bag of crisps in the evening, I'll just have a bag of crisps. I'm not going to spiritually or verbally or mentally condemn myself because I've acted out and had, you know, I found myself eating cheese and peanut butter the other night. One of the most unhealthy things you could probably combine together. But do you know what? Afterwards, I'm like, yeah, and I'm a human being. I don't need to be hijacked by a mind that is hardwired with that trauma from childhood to punish myself every time that I kind of do something that's perhaps not so conscious or whatever. You know, it's not.
Yeah, it's important to like to fall out. Like, nobody can be conscious 100% of the time, but like the whole idea is to slip out of consciousness, and these triggers kind of take over, don't they? And it's like the amazing thing is when that happens, that's your opportunity for growth, isn't it? So you can use that trigger to access like that wounded part of yourself, and then maybe give it some sort of, like Gabor Mate, I know you love Gabor Mate as well, talks about just curiously investigating, but non-judgmentally. And yeah, I've been doing a lot of self-compassion, which I know you work with as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's more about focusing just on the practice rather than the results of the practice. And this is a really great analogy that I know about discipline and about being too hard on yourself and being too rigid. And the analogy is that, you know, in a forest, when you go into a forest and you look at the trees, well, when the wind blows, the trees bend like that. They bend with the wind, you know. And if a tree grows and it's immensely rigid and that wind comes along, it will stand for a while, but sooner or later it will snap.
Yeah.
And, you know, going back to that Sangha, that family, that support network, that if any of us have been through stuff, it's essential, you know, it's real nuts and bolts stuff, you know, it's really important not to, because the one thing I found with childhood trauma and not negative, but experiences that are of a very deep nature, sometimes you can get into later life, into your 40s and 50s, and you start to recluse a little bit, you know. And what I found is sometimes it's difficult, sometimes I don't want to be around people, but sometimes I know that it's for my best interest to do that, you know. And when you're in a forest and there is a strong wind, all of those trees bend together. But if that tree is out there on its own, stiff, rigid, kind of formally disciplined, you don't stand a chance, really. It's really important, I think, not to isolate.
Yeah, it is really important. Yeah, because it's so easy, just because of well, most of us, well, all of us are struggling with self-worth issues, and to isolate yourself and cut yourself off means that you're not going to get as activated and you don't have to deal with much. So like isolation is kind of a coping mechanism for some people as well, I guess.
I mean,
Yeah.
why take that risk? Why get vulnerable with other people, or, you know, give your heart, open your heart in some sort of way? I mean, I come from the heart a lot of the time because that was I did a meditation facilitator course with the Heart of Living Yoga recently, which is an incredible charity organization. I'm sorry to plug it, but, you know, they've helped me so much in overcoming some of those things just by gently touching in at the heart, meditating in the heart center. And it's so healing, because when we go through trauma, that heart closes up. We stop trusting, we stop being vulnerable, we stop offering ourselves so freely to people because we might get hurt. You
Well,
know,
we
so
retreat, don't we, to protect, but it becomes
it.
hardened and we can't
Sure.
access it as much.
Sure. So it's been a real journey for me personally to be able to come to a place. And there's some things that, you know, I'm still working through. You know, I never really favor the expression work in progress, because some people give themselves permission to go about with all sorts of behavior. Oh, it's okay because I'm a work in progress. No, but I guess in some ways I kind of am a work in progress, because there is still stuff going on in my life which causes me a tremendous amount of sadness if I attach to it too much. And I have to really, really remember that whatever the source energy is, and I choose not to really give it a name, the universe, the spirit of the universe, it always has my back. And whatever comes round the corner, whatever challenge or whatever difficulty or whatever causes me pain in any kind of way, the end result is of that event or series of events is to raise my vibration, to raise my consciousness to a place where I can be of benefit as a result of that incident happening, or whatever that is. So this area that I'm going through at the moment, the upshot of that, it may be next week, it may be next year, it may be 20 years down the line, but I do know that there will be something there where I'll look back at this moment that I'm in and go, so there it is. Okay. I get it now. Yeah. It may not be clear at the moment, and that's okay. You know, it's a bit like the weather in a way. Some days it's sunshine, some days it's cloudy, some days it's stormy, some days, you know, you're basking in sunshine, and
Yeah,
you know, I don't get attached too much. Okay, this is how it is. Okay,
it's
I'm still
important,
here.
isn't it? Yeah, just to sort of recognize
Yeah.
and be okay with where you are, and like realize that you don't have to be vibrating at a height. Like we need a balance, don't we? And it's
Oh, sure. I think when we met, Danny, I was very much in denial of a lot of the deeper wounding that I was going through. You know, I was on the path to enlightenment, and, you know, I used to wear that big top hat with feathers and everything, you know, rah, get a piece of me kind of thing. And, you know, that's great. And I see people now coming through who are very much, you know, just on the first kind of stages of that journey. And it inspires me. So I was like, oh, bless. I was so like you once, you know, and I feed in on their inspiration and their cosmic. You know?
It's cool, isn't it? But it's like you get to. I used to have a super ego as well, where I could do anything, and I was just Dan the man that can. But we get these depths of the ego, don't we? Like, well, the universe will just suddenly, you'll be running along at 100 miles an hour, and bang, you hit a wall, and then that's it, isn't it? That's the start of a new journey and a new path. And how do we integrate? Like, we recognize these fragmented parts of the self, and sorry, that was a cat.
I recognized this the other day when, you know, I was never, ever as a child taught to grieve properly. I was kept away from funerals. I was certainly not allowed to be with my parents, visiting my grandmother in the funeral home, you know, to see her body. And so I had absolutely no idea as a child of how to cope with the loss of my father, for instance. I mean, my father sat me down at the age of 11 and told me that he'd contracted leukemia and he was going to be dead very soon. And that's where the wheels began to fall off, you know. And then realizing that his leukemia was the same leukemia as what had taken my brother before I was born, and this exposure to radiation that my father had gone through on Christmas Island during Operation Grapple in 1956. You know, it's down for the H-bomb tests, and the whole resentment that came out with the Ministry of Defence.
Yeah.
And yet I look at it now and I think, well, hang on a minute, life would have been very different if you'd have had a brother. You know, and that childhood trauma, it did lead me through 30 years, I'll be honest, 30 years of addiction and alcoholism. But, you know, looking back, it all happened for a reason. And would I change any of it? Maybe some of the people who got kind of caught in the maelstrom along the way of what I was going through. I wouldn't want that on anyone. But particularly, you know, not family members, but really the place that I'm at today, I kind of look back at 90% of it and go, yeah, it was worth it, you know. And I mean that genuinely. I'm not just, you know, spiritually sidetracking a lot of stuff that happened, which was immensely horrible, because at the time it was immensely horrible. But you get what I'm saying.
I'm just wondering, like, so is that something, could you see that as a pattern through, if you look back through ancestrally, because you would have experienced massive betrayal, massive loss, and like normally these are the patterns, and this is the work that you're doing. You're healing that whole pattern, like.
Sure, absolutely. I remember my mum telling me some stories about my father and how he was bullied by his two sisters, who are older than him, when he was very, very young. He was the youngest in the family. And, you know, I can very much understand the reasons why he joined the military. He was older than most dads, you know, a lot older. He had me when he was 60. And so I'm 50 now. So you can do the maths. You know, he left London in 1920 something to join the RAF because of the Great Depression. You know, it was his only way of getting out of that. You know, and if I was in his shoes, I'd probably do the same. You know, I wouldn't want to be, I don't know, living in the East End of London in the early 20s, 30s.
Yeah.
And I've read his memoirs recently, and that was an immensely healing process. His journeys across the world on boats, and his career as a senior accountant in the RAF, an amazing man. But if you'd have asked me 10 years ago what I thought of my father, well, you'd probably have to stop the recording, because I would come up with, all built on this anger towards somebody, because he was such a big figure in my life, Danny. He was such a huge figure in my life. He was somebody who, as a child, was a giant to me. And then to get sat down and told that he was going to die, my world fell apart. I can no longer rely on this person, because this person's going to die. And then the rebellion started, and then the whole kind of addiction started, and oh my God, 30 years. But hey, and I have that kind of conscious contact a lot of the time. I can just be walking down the road one day or down the path, and I'll just start whistling something, I don't know, like Skippity Doodah. It was one of these always whistling or singing Skippity Doodah, and or I hear not Duke Ellington, I can't remember typical fog moment, What a Wonderful World. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. That song, that was one of his favorites.
Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong, thank you.
Yeah.
But so I do have those moments where, and I come out with stuff. I say, oh my God, I'll turn into the dad.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
I'm proud of that today, because he was honestly, he was a great man. So I really can say, hand on heart, that, the experiences that I went through, though incredibly painful, though incredibly traumatic, and yes, it impacted a hell of a lot of people in a negative way, it was kind of worth it to what I've got today. The insight that life has given me, particularly with yoga and meditation. I'm part of another thing as well, but I'm not going to endorse that, because we believe in attraction rather than promotion. And, there's a lot of famous people in the world who do what I do, and I'm not famous. I'm not doing that, but you know what I mean. I'm not going to get into that one. If anybody watching this is suffering with alcohol addiction or drug addiction, then there's a 12-step fellowship near you.
It would be amazing. We could also maybe have a chat one time about addiction.
Love to.
And about the 12 steps and how that's helped you. I haven't, I've struggled with, it's not the same, but I've struggled with nicotine addiction and certain other addictions. So, but it's nothing compared to what you've been through. Well,
I listen to other people's stories. I mean, they say compare and despair, don't they? But sometimes it does make me immensely grateful that I got off the train when I did. I never injected. But, even from childhood, before I even knew what drugs were, my behaviour weren't right. I used to hold my breath underneath the swimming pool, or, stand on my head until I blacked out. And, I just wasn't comfortable in who I was, really. I wasn't comfortable being Graham. I felt as if I always felt like I'd come from somewhere else, be it a different planet or whatever. And I know that feeling. I'd incarnated here on planet Earth, and I really didn't know what I was doing here. And it's like, I don't understand what you're teaching me. I don't understand this idea of love. And I really don't kind of fit in well with social circles and stuff like that. And, it took a long...
Was that because you could kind of see through and society acts a certain way, don't they? Like when you meet a lot of people when they're out socially, they've got a different mask for a different occasion, and it's almost hard to connect with certain people in society, especially when you're struggling with your own issues around belonging, because I think if we've got issues of belonging, we automatically put up this barrier with connection anyway. But yeah,
Yeah,
people
100.
wearing masks does make you feel even more alone, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can do. I try and always remember that the reason they've got the mask on is to protect themselves as well. You know,
Yeah,
we're in
yeah,
a society today where showing feelings and vulnerability in many, many levels or stratas of society is still looked upon as being a sort of weakness. And that's why I
yeah,
find it so attractive when I go to a yoga class, or I go to a workshop, or I meet up with friends on Zoom. They're authentic people that are on the path and really doing their best to show up. And, you know, none of us, they said, it was a very old book once. I'm not a Christian by any stretch of the imagination, but one quote that I really like from the Bible is um, to live in the village but not be part of the village. It's something along those lines anyway. I might have it wrong, but it would be very easy for all of us, wouldn't it, to run away to a cave in the Himalayas and sit in sadhana for 6 or 7 years. But where's the learning in that? We might go
yeah. Well,
inside and learn, but the real meditation is to be, you know, in towns, in cities, doing sira or service, and being able to be an active part in society in some sort of way, you know, to make a better tomorrow for those less fortunate. And you know, people really went out their way to enable me to walk through that door. So I just find it's part of my journey now to be able to do that on the same level. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think just having so many people consciously aware of themselves more and working with their stuff is creating a great big network of support
Yeah.
for like this. It's like a new movement almost, isn't it? But
100%.
it's it's a reintegration of the fragmented parts of the self, but like like everything is reflecting everything else. Like I'm probably reflecting of you in the fact that I really struggle with being alone. And so whereas you retreat and can be on your own, I do the opposite. I could do with more time on my own to create more space for myself and my feelings, because for me, because I abandoned self, I was always looking externally for that love and for that acceptance, and not capable of giving it to myself. So it didn't feel comfortable to be alone, if that makes sense.
It does 100%. I was chuckling there for a bit because I was thinking to myself, I don't really have much choice living up here in Snowdonia.
No, no, yeah.
I could go and walk for, I don't know, 7-8 miles and not bump into another soul.
What a beautiful part of the world, though, man.
It is. It's been quite dark and a bit Mordory lately up here with the howling wind and the rain.
I don't think I could handle it, to be honest.
You get used to your own company quite quickly, but I say that my partner, who's here all the time, she sometimes has to go away. She works in healthcare, and she has to go and do training sessions. And you know, when I'm used to her being around, and then suddenly she goes away, it's game on. You know, then you
Activates
really
that
have to get
abandonment.
into that stuff that you're talking about. You know, being able to properly sit with yourself for extended amounts of time without any sort of distraction whatsoever. And I try and take that up as a practice as soon as she's gone. I'm like, right, I'm going to sit and just be aware of the present and be okay of the here and now, and not kind of reach, because the senses will start reaching, even though I'm not even conscious of them doing it. You know, I have another cup of tea in my hand because I want to feel that warmth. I want to feel that comfort. You know, or I'll go to the fridge for something. No,
Yeah.
I really have to be very, very, not strict, but I have to be very just mindful of treating myself with the due care and diligence that I deserve as a human, because I think that as society is at the moment, we're so distracted all the time. You know, 100 new things come out on Netflix almost every day, you know, and
Yeah.
YouTube, and you know, we've got Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and this and that. And you know, I think to myself, I just enjoy putting it on flight mode sometimes. And I take at least 3 months of every year, and not 3 months, 2.5, where I just have a digital detox.
Oh, wow.
I will take Facebook off. I will message certain people on WhatsApp who are regularly in touch with me and say, can you just go through regular SMS? And I'll just turn everything off and flick the router on. And probably once a week, I might check in on my email just because there might be some really important stuff on there. But other than that, just cut it out. And do you know what?
Yeah.
It's like a detox for the first 3 days. You kind of have a bit of a cluck going on. You're like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. And you keep reaching for the phone and go, oh yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Then after that, you're into things in a much more focused way. The walking that I do, the photography that I do, the painting that I do, the reading that I do is all on a much more richer, deeper level of experience.
Because you're not abandoning self, and you're embracing your creativity, which is, I mean, I could take a note out of your book. I need to do more of that. When I'm in the UK, I really struggle with that. But as you know, we've been living in Portugal for a bit and going back out again soon. But when we're in Portugal, like every morning I get up and I start the day. We're living in the mountains, just walk up the mountain, but I get out for 2 hours, like hiking every morning. And I do yoga. I do yoga every day anyway. I don't, if I'm feeling overrun down, I have the odd day off here and there. But these routines that we do, like yoga, meditation, cardio, and just keeping everything in check is really, really important part of self-compassion, self-love, and self-growth, and this healing that we're on as well.
Yeah, you touched on a really interesting point there, because the mornings particularly are really, really important. And what these devices do is they're hijacking a lot of people's brain chemistry when it comes to hormones and when it comes to the endorphins, you know, the serotonin, dopamine, cortisol, oxytocin. And what is happening is we're getting up in the morning, we're having that little bit of cortisol, that little bit of stress, I'm immediately picking this up for a dopamine hit.
Yeah, because you can get attachment, like, oh, I need to connect, I need attachment. How many likes have I got on Facebook? You know, I'm rubbish with social media. I don't. I'm going to try and get better, like for the channel and everything. But yeah, it's that instant looking for external recognition, and we become addicted to it.
Yeah. It's like digital flattery all the time, and you get a feeling of well-being from that. And if you can get out, if all of us can try, even if it's raining, it doesn't matter. Just try and get out in the morning and get the light going into your eye.
Yeah.
I'm reading a really great book at the moment. It's called God Man, the Word Made Flesh. And it's taking apart a lot of ancient teachings from a lot of books and using them as a metaphor for the manual for the human body. One of the things it's talking about is the optic thalamus and how it's connected with the pineal gland, and how you can bring about a kind of release of dormant brain chemistry, pretty much. Brain chemistry that, as we get older, isn't used so much, and particularly not now, where we're in artificially lit offices, and people go from their bedroom to the kitchen to the lounge to their car to the office, and then do it all over again. It's box, 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 box,
It's
box,
absolutely
box.
mental, isn't it? Like, it is. We are living in an insane world. Like,
You may as well just walk around with a cardboard box.
We're not living, are we? Like, this is, we're just so programmed by the system that we do everything without thinking, and all everybody's doing is just doing this crazy routine every day in these little boxes to buy their little, to buy their car, to buy their house, just so they can get recognition through what they've done and what they're achieving in this external world. And it's crazy.
It is crazy, and it's very sad in a way. And I don't think it's ingeniously set up by the system to do this, but what's happening is people generally, and I was one of them for many years, because of poor diet, because of dirty drinking water, our systems are becoming more and more duller and
polluted. Yeah.
And so even if somebody suggested, hey, do you want to try and making some changes in your life, you'd be like, what are you talking about? My life's fine. And they would believe that their life is fine. They're paying the bills, tick. They've got the mortgage sorted out, tick. They get to work on time, tick. The missus is reasonably happy. The kids go to school on time. The laundry's done. There's food in the fridge. Everything tick, 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 tick. But all that is on the outside. That's all external stuff.
Yeah.
How much care are we giving? How much shopping do we do for the inside? How much mortgage repayments are we doing on our own soul?
Well, if you Googled, like, go on Translator and translate Latin to English, mortgage.
Till you're dead.
It's death gag.
Death gag.
Yeah. I know, man. I know. And it's not without a reason. Yeah. It's crazy.
I thought somebody told me once that it was mort age death till you're dead. But
it could be. I mean, I've noticed about 2 weeks ago. I've known this for years, but I Googled. I did the Latin, the Google Translate government, and it came up mind control. I did it again 2 days ago, and they've changed it.
Ah.
Yeah. So they're onto it, but it's still govern is to control. Everybody knows that. And then if you put mente is the mind. But their language is so powerful. It really, really is.
Yes, indeed. Again, in this book that I was talking about, if anybody's at all interested, I highly recommend this book that I'm reading at the moment. And there are so many insights into it of how, when you break down certain words and look at certain words for what they really are, all their ancient translations, you come up with this new information, and you're like, crikey, that is so powerful. How did we go so long with it right there? And
yeah.
Not,
I love language. So a minute ago, you were talking about the brain, and you were talking about the hypothalamus, which is actually called the hypothalamus, which in ancient Greek is seahorse.
Hey.
And if you think of the subconscious mind being watery, it's talking about a part of the subconscious mind. And the pineal gland, the word pineal, is in the Bible as well. Jacob climbed the 33 rungs of Jacob's ladder, which is your 33 vertebrae in your spine.
Yes.
And he fought the devil, and he threw him down, and he said, I named this place pineal. And that's your pineal gland. Yeah. And
it says in this book that Jacob translates as heel chaser. So this is
wow.
The story of Jacob is actually a metaphoric allegory for reincarnation.
Yeah, well, Christ died at 33. Like, it's the 33 vertebrae where you've got these salts which travel up the spine.
Yeah.
When they hit the pineal gland, it's a rebirth. So it's a death and then a rebirth. And that was what the Shroud of Christ was. It was used in a ceremony of spiritual enlightenment, or what they perceived to be spiritual enlightenment. And also what's quite funny is, haven't quite worked out the connection yet, but in Freemasonry, they always talk about if you're a 33rd degree.
That's right.
Means,
you've had a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
Some description. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that originates from the Knights Templar, but it's it is. It's amazing how, like, for years and years, we all looked for the answers, because we've always been, like, we knew society wasn't right. We've always been externally searching and looking externally for all the answers. And then something happened. We realized at some point, and I think it's the same for all of us, and if we trace it, it'll be similar points in time where the journey is completely flipped, and we've realized the answers aren't out there. We can find everything, and there's some really valuable information, but the real answers are through using our emotions as the gateways to other dimensions to do this internal work.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm going to check that book out. God, man, that looks really good.
Amazing book. Actually, Danny, I don't mind sending it on to you once I've finished with it. I'll post it on to you, because it really is a great book. Maybe do a book swap or something. Set up our own little online library.
Yeah. Well, you've got to do. You've got to read No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz. That's amazing.
I think I've got that on a post-it note somewhere.
I think I told you to a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
I need to get hold of that book. It's still on a post-it note on the cupboard downstairs.
Gabor Mate has done an amazing book. I haven't read it. My partner has. I've just finished Scattered Minds by Gabor Mate, but I'm gonna order this book now. It's called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts.
Yes. Yeah, a very, very good book by all accounts. I've not read it cover to cover. I've dipped in and out of it around a friend's house, but there are a lot of people in recovery who say that everything that he was talking about in there, they can identify with in their own lives.
He's amazing, dude, isn't he? Really
incredible guy, you know. And I think it's really a very, very beautiful thing how he's come on the scene and started to really develop an online network of people around this time, right at the right moment when people are becoming more and more aware of exactly what it was that they went through, and how to navigate that and come through the other side of that with a completely different understanding about it than what it was when they were either going through it or, you know, carrying all of that, which, you know, he's got so much wisdom, that gentleman.
He's amazing. But how amazing is it that these people are showing up at exactly the right time, like when we need them, like when we hit a block in our development, like they're giving us the tools to continue our journey, you know. And it's just so amazing. For years we felt so alone with our struggles and like really battling with our demons, like especially I can imagine with addiction, it's like schizophrenia, really needed to stop but not being able to, and you know, and it just these massive internal battles where we were really struggling with, you know, just and so afraid to talk out about like what was going on internally. But now, like, it's just amazing how so many beautiful souls are just sharing their knowledge, their experience, and they're so humble. They're not saying I'm a guru and I've got all the answers. Everyone is on their own journey and standing amazingly in their own vulnerability, which is so powerful. And yeah, it's literally changing the fabric of the universe. It's amazing.
I think in all fairness, I mean, I speak of this from a personal perspective. If somebody came up to me like 15 years ago or 10 years ago and tried to introduce some of these concepts, theories, methods and techniques into my life because they thought that it would be a benefit to me, I would have rejected them straight away as being, well, I would have called them all the names under the sun, you know. And I can remember actually sometime in the mid-90s walking through the green fields at Glastonbury reasonably early in the morning. I'd been up all night, you know, the usual thing, and seeing people doing yoga and thinking it was some sort of joke, you know.
Yeah, I know, me too, man. I do it every day now.
Yeah.
Just thinking like you got to be a weird hippie or like, I don't know. But yeah, it's feminine and like afraid to sort of, but it's such a beautiful, yeah. And then I started doing yoga and working on building sites. A few years ago, I was working away and I borrowed my partner's camper. So I turned up in a bright yellow camper with like, what they call sunflowers all over it and stuff. And then I opened the back door and my yoga mat fell out. And all these other builders were like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with this guy?" And like, and I was vegan at the time. I was vegan for a couple of years, and yeah, and they were bringing Cornish pasties in at lunchtime, and I was like, "I can't, I'm vegan." I took such a hammering. Everybody was ripping the piss out of me. I didn't mind, but like that's just how society is or was. Yeah.
There's the gold, Danny. Not to be attached to somebodyness. Like I think there was so many, not so many, but there are a handful of people within the community who are so attached to being the yogi or being the enlightened one.
Oh, I've come across
someone from another dimension or another walk of life comes in and has a thing with them, they're automatically wounded, and you know, this whole battle of you're gaslighting me, you're a narcissist, da 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 da. When you know, we can just kind of go, yeah, yes I am. How are you? You're right. Imagine cup of tea later, yeah. And I don't go into it. I can turn on and turn off that MO like a water tap. You know, I can just start going, all right, mate, cool, blimey, yeah, it's all right, isn't it? Yeah, you know, and roll with it. And
it's parts, isn't it? It's parts of the self, like
social language.
Yeah,
it's social language. And if we're going to be walking around like the rigid tree, if you're going to be walking around like this, I only teach Zen meditation on a Tuesday nights, and I sit on my flower.
You're going to break, baby. Yeah.
What's that all about? That's ego spirituality.
Yeah, it is.
What yoga teaches us, what meditation surely teaches, what a spiritual awakening should teach us, is that we can flow. We can, you know, people got this hang up about being on a spiritual path and making money.
Yeah.
Like, I heard it said the other day, oh, it says in the Bible that money is the root of all evil. It's not at all.
No, money's an energy.
Money's an energy.
Access to abundance.
What's written in the Bible is the love of money is the root of all evil. It's our attachment to the money that's the problem. Attachment causes suffering. That's
we're all struggling with attachment issues. Like we've all got attachment trauma, and like money is a massive part of that. But like I find the more that I've worked through my stuff, the less I'm struggling for money as well. And it's because like we're letting down the resistance. But it is like we were talking a minute ago about different parts. If somebody, and you were saying about 15 years ago, if somebody tried to tell you some of the stuff, like if you'd have come to me 15 years ago and said that I was made up of loads of different personalities and parts, I'd have thought you were off. I would be like, I'm not schizo, man. But like, we all are. And they're all functioning parts to meet certain needs. And it's all about getting our needs met in a in a healthy way, and just, yeah, it's and that's what we're working with, is these parts of the self, and it's amazing. It really is. What a journey.
Yeah, yeah. I just had a point there, and it just evaporated. And what a teacher told me was, I'd struggled there, and I was going, oh, I needed to tell you something. It's just on the tip of my tongue. She goes, like, let it go. Don't be attached to it, because it's sometimes what we think doesn't need to be expressed. But I've just remembered it. So,
Yeah.
there it is. We'll talk about it. But when we talk about this attachment and the suffering that comes with it, it's so easy, isn't it, to get something and hold it so desperately tightly in the fear that it's going to go someday. And you know, everything goes one day. This body that I look at, which I choose to call Danny, and this body that you're looking at that you choose to call Graham, will dissolve and probably be eaten by worms. Let's have it right, you know, or it'll be burned. And so this attachment to things on the outside of us. Don't get me wrong, I'm immensely attached to music, and I'm still struggling getting rid of that lot, which is a giant, a huge record collection that spans halfway around the room. So I'm guilty. I'm not trying to put myself up.
I'm terrible, man. Like, I'm really bad. I've got skateboard, surfboard. Like, my partner's trying to get me to get rid of everything. She's whittling down everything because we're trying to live off grid. But I'm rubbish.
My partner's on it too, Danny. It's so
I've
painful.
got so many gadgets and different tools, and like I'm in the I build camper vans, so I've got I can't get rid of everything. And my attachment to those things is invested in my self-worth as well, because I can't do what I'm going to do without those things.
What will I do without my records? I won't be able to DJ at summer festivals. And then what? Oh, but love, we're meant to be moving into a living vehicle. Oh, I could put them into store. Who's going to pay for the storage?
I'll look after him, mate. I can't promise you'll see him again.
This is it.
There's a Paulo Coelho book, and I can't remember which book it was, but he gave his whole library away. And it was the most amazing thing he'd ever done in his life. But that point completely changed his life. And I get that, and I understand that. And I've been in a place of letting go of things. But I'm doing the work I'm doing with myself at the moment. I'm not following anybody else. I'm doing my thing. And I am investing. I bought a pizza oven yesterday to take back to Portugal to start doing like sourdough pizzas at the markets, and we've got a cinema screen. So I'm rubbish at whittling down. But I thought, you know, like, everyone's off grid over there. Let's have a film and a pizza night with an outdoor cinema, you know, and I will charge people, and I will try and make money for this, because I want to create a life for myself of abundance. But we've all got things that we can share that are worth value. And whether, like at the moment, we've got money as a currency, but I don't think that's going to hold out. Like, I think we're in for some crazy times, and we're going to be going digital currencies and carbon credits. But like what it will change is we'll start going back to trading. I was living in Greece in 2008 when we had the recession, and we couldn't draw any money out of the banks. I'd go and do a job for somebody. They'd give me loads of fruit and vegetables. I'd go and do a job for somebody else, and I was a meat eater at the time. They'd give me a lamb or something, and you know, and that was, we went back to basics, and it was amazing. Like for probably about a year. It was really cool. And yeah, abundance is just being able to live. Like, there's a balance, isn't there? Because we've got addiction to things, but then there's also like that there's an abundance if we're like creating something. Then like if you're painting, you need all your colors, and you need the right brushes, and you need the right canvas. So yeah,
I also need to remember to sell my work, and I've got so many paintings around the house that need selling, but I get attached to them. I fall in love with
maybe create a gallery.
Maybe create a gallery.
And the one that the more that you love them, maybe the more you can sort of add on to the price. And
I think going back to, he says, avoiding becoming successful. Oh, no, hot topic. Let's just move it back to attachment. Mustn't get too vulnerable about my resistance to becoming successful now. Oof.
Oh, self-sabotage and like the fear
syndrome
around getting what we want. Like my whole life, if I ever did what I wanted and I was doing well, it was sabotaged by the, so I've got a massive fear of success.
Absolutely, same. I'm going to a yoga workshop tomorrow with my yoga teacher who's starting me on a teacher training course, part of the British School of Yoga, and I'm like, I feel like I'm being pushed down a bottleneck, and I'm just like, right, this is it now, off we go. And I self-sabotaged and been under the cosh of imposter syndrome on this for like 5 years. I've been trying to get to the next part of I've done the foundation with British, now I'm onto the proper stuff, and it's been a real struggle to be able to commit myself to that level of self-improvement, because how will I do the tax returns, how will I do and it's like, you know what, it will all be okay. How many people have come up to me and said, what you do, what you teach, the meditation that I do, how many people have ever come up to me and gone, didn't like that was rubbish? Not one. So it's not like the old analogy where there's 1,000 people that all say really nice stuff and there's that one person who says that. There isn't even that one person, and I'm still like this.
It's because of your inner critic.
Absolutely.
And it's because of yourself. I'm 47 and I'm like, this is like, I'm not getting paid for this, but this is heading in a direction that I want to go in, and I'm going to start doing workshops and talks, and I'm going to add them onto a website where I will charge people, for a workshop or for a podcast and for a guided meditation. But it's been so hard just even stepping in this direction. But what really helped me is recognizing the parts of the resistance and working with those parts of myself and understanding and just looking at it. Why why are you afraid to do something that you love and get paid for it? Why doesn't that feel right? Because you've got so much to offer people as well.
Oh no, people say, I know. Well, if I knew, why am I still sat in the problem? Well, yeah, we could talk for another 2 hours about childhood programming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's pointless sometimes looking for the match when the house is already burnt down. It's about, or digging a well when your house is on fire. That's another good one. But no, you're in the now. You have resistance about something. It's coming from somewhere. And I guess like with meditation, it's not about pushing the thoughts away. The thoughts will come. Just don't invite them in and make them a cup of tea. Or
use the thoughts, let the thoughts in, like let the fear in, let everything in, but hold space, start compassionate inquiry, find out what's going on.
Absolutely. I think for me, going back and finding little Graham somewhere along the road, because he's still sat on the road, and all the time that I'm trying to push forward and force myself forward, I don't think it's ever going to work. It's about going back, finding that wounded little child, picking him up or holding him by the hand and saying, come on, mate, we're going to walk down this road together. It's going to be all right this time.
Yeah. It's about holding space.
That's really coming from here rather than coming from here. I think the intellect will just go, I've got this. Well, the intellect told me for 30 years that I didn't have a drug and alcohol problem. It was all right because I wasn't injecting, or it was all right because I wasn't sitting on the bench each morning.
They're called protector parts, and they do serve a good purpose. And for a time, they protected the exile, and they did what they needed to do to help you survive. But they're like outdated programs in a computer running in the background.
Yeah.
We don't need to turn them off. We just need to update them on the situation. So you need to, yeah, maybe, I don't know if you'd be up for it, but when I go back to Portugal and I've got a bit more time, I'm looking to do some more case studies. So yes, we could do some parts work if you'd like. Yeah.
Love to. Yeah, I'd sign me up.
Yeah, definitely.
Do that. We're very sorry, no, you were going to say.
Well, I'm just looking at the time.
Hey, look at that. Hour and 20 minutes nearly.
I know. It's been bloody amazing. It really has.
Thank you, Danny. It's been amazing. Real privilege talking to you tonight. Thank you very much.
It always is. And whenever we do talk, I always get like valuable information off you. And it definitely helps, you know, with my stuff. And it's just great not feeling it, just being able to talk to somebody and just be recognized and understood and being able to express anything, you know, it's just such an awesome thing. Yeah. We definitely need more of that.
Just quickly, a lovely quote just to leave it on. It will be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, it's not the end.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's a beautiful one, man.
I think it was John Lennon. Not sure.
Really? Oh, no, that's awesome. Well, let's have a chat again soon.
I look forward to it, Danny. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for coming on, Graham. I really appreciate it, man.
Very cool.